Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Tell me a spooky story. I'm working a night shift and I'm bored. Tell me a story. Amuse or horrify me, I don't care. I would prefer if the story was real.
I've had a lot of mildly psychic precognitive experiences which definitely make me question both the linearity of time and the nature of reality, ranging from incredibly strong déjà vu where I'm 100% convinced I have experienced this exact thing before, to the day I woke up with thoughts and feelings of particular fondness for a family member I hadn't seen for a while. On a whim, I decided to buy them a gift of an album by their favorite band. The exact moment I walked out of the store, my phone rang, and my distraught sister informed me that the same relative had just died, suddenly and unexpectedly. Then there was the most vivid dream I've ever had of someone else I knew who had died. I was aware in the dream they were dead, and I asked them what it felt like to die. They asked me if I really wanted to know. What followed was a sensation I can only describe as being like something trying to drag my soul out of my body while my body fought against it. It felt so intense I wanted to scream, and I tried to, but couldn't. It was like trying to exhale until there's no air left in your lungs, but the air wasn't running out. It was just constant exhalation until what felt like my consciousness exited my body like it was being sucked through my eye sockets, which woke me up in an absolute panic because I genuinely believed I had died or was about to. That particular experience will haunt me forever, and it's my firm belief that is exactly what death will feel like. At certain times, and only ever at night, I also experience auditory hallucinations which sound like trying to tune into a radio signal of someone. Sometimes multiple people talking, but being unable to hold on to it. Just short snippets of conversation and static that are impossible to make sense. I haven't had any experiences like this for about 2 years now, however. It might just be a consequence of near constant stress and a lot of negative experiences in my life recently, but I hope they come back.
First, I was 13 or 14 years old, and my dad's company had an office on the 4th floor in an old heritage-listed building in Western Australia. Would enter the building lobby and all was good. As soon as my foot would hit the first step to start going up, the hair on the back of my neck would stand up and a complete feeling of dread would come over me. This would continue the entire way up the stairs and into the 4th floor hallway. As soon as we stepped into the office, everything would stop. If I took an immediate step backwards into the hallway, hairs on end and feeling of dread would immediately return. I tested, and it would carry into the hallways on any of the other floors. I tried researching if there were any notable news stories around the building but found nothing. Admittedly, this was before the internet had any referential use and I could only go through the Perth City Library archives. To this day, I have never experienced anything like it, and I'm now in my 30s. Second, staying with aunt and uncle out on family land during school holidays. Was 16 at the time. Coming home from a day of tennis around 7 p.m. and we noticed 2 lights out to the right of our car. Uncle was booking it at around 100 kilometers per hour. The lights remained perfectly perpendicular to our car as we drove along. We knew the property that was there. It was over 100 acres of grazing land for cattle, and had no houses, sheds or anything on it, just grass and fencing. All looking out the window at these things pacing us. Uncle slows to a stop and we get out. Things are still sitting perfectly perpendicular with us and have stopped moving too. Uncle worked as a line inspector for a gas company, so the car had a sat phone. Call people that own the property, confirm they are all at home. We stand there for another 10 minutes looking at these lights, then get back in the car and continue towards home. Lights continue to pace us for another couple of kilometers, then instantly disappear. Looked them up. Think they were min lights, but still no idea to this day what we saw.
I have 2, and they both occurred on the same trip to Ireland. Me and my wife were driving down a road in the countryside at about 12 a.m. at night. The road is so narrow that you cannot fit 2 cars side by side, even though it's a 2-way road, so if another car is oncoming you need to slow down or stop and try to maneuver around each other. We see the headlights of a car directly ahead at a bit of a distance moving toward us at high speed, so I start to slow down. But I notice the other car is not slowing down and actually starts to speed up. I'm starting to get a little nervous and say to my wife I hope he slows down soon, but he continues to accelerate. I then say to my wife that it might be a drunk driver or the driver is on their phone and hasn't noticed. I'm flashing my headlights and beeping the horn. Now, me and my wife are both losing it ourselves and starting to panic. There's nowhere to go on this road. Left or right, there are 8 or 10 feet grassy banks, and this car is coming right at us at around 100 miles per hour. I just panicked and shout, "Get out of the car." We both got out and jumped out of the way and tried to climb up the banks to get clear of the impending crash. I put my head down bracing for the crash, but it didn't come. I pick my head up and turn around, and I see that what I thought were headlights on a car were actually 2 orbs of lights. They had slowed down to about 5 to 10 miles per hour and passed through the car, then suddenly sped off again at about 100 miles per hour before fading away. The other incident happened a few nights after this. We were staying in a hotel that was also a very old castle, so had a very old style stone spiral staircase, exactly pic related. Me and my wife came out of the room to head out for dinner and saw a pale woman with jet black hair and a very old style looking dress walk past our room. She turned to smile and nod at us and walked into the staircase with us following closely behind. She started to speed up, and about halfway down the staircase she went out right, and we stopped hearing her footsteps. She had completely vanished. We told the receptionist about it, and she nodded and said that hotel guests have mentioned the same thing since they started the business. The receptionists don't know who she is, but believe she was an old resident of the family who owned the castle hundreds of years ago. The fact that these happened on the same trip is amazing. Ireland, especially the rural parts, just has this strange ancient spiritual energy about it.
Started smoking weed in 2019. Just laid in bed alone listening to music and spiraling deep into fantasy. Only doing it to escape the stress from a doomed relationship I wasn't ready to let go of, starting school at 24, miserable job, depression, etc. A couple weeks go by smoking every 2 or 3 days. One day, after smoking a pretty small quantity, the weed hits too hard and I start greening out. Extreme nausea, room spinning, head exploding. Literally felt like I was going to die. Sit on my couch and stare out the window trying to ignore my nausea. Wish for death, exhale all the oxygen in my lungs, and just sit there. Consider that if my body just stopped doing its automatic processes, then I could just die from oxygen deprivation. Manually stop breathing for a couple minutes. No thoughts, just suspended in this moment of existential self-terminality and illness. My breath returns, and as I'm staring out the window, 2 energy forms manifest in my vision. They look like pure light, without emanating light, just solid colors in a humanoid shape and no other visually definable features. The first figure spoke to me. It was white energy and the figure of a man. It's been a few years, but I'm paraphrasing with like 90% accuracy. It said to me in an authoritative and fatherly tone, "You shouldn't be here. Bad things can happen to you when you're here for too long." At that moment, I got the impression that it was because I was too high and I was being warned of the subsequent metaphysical vulnerabilities. The second being then spoke to me with a caring, motherly tone, a purple figure in the shape of a hardy woman. She told me that I was going to be okay and this intense illness would pass. She said I was going to vomit exactly 3 times before I would start feeling better. Almost immediately after, the wave of nausea peaked and I ran to the bathroom. Collapsed on the floor and vomited into the toilet worse than ever before in my life. After the first wave of vomiting, there's no relief whatsoever. Hang out by the toilet for the next 30 minutes with the worst nausea and stomach pains of my life. Vomit comes in 2 more waves. After the 3rd wave finished, it felt like my body was purged. I was still coming down from my greened out state, but the nausea had passed. I didn't have any more experiences beyond the few sentences that were spoken to me by these beings. I'm someone that's never had a supernatural experience in my life and the type to write off anybody's paranormal experiences as tricks of the mind. However, I'm still convinced to this day that this experience of mine was as real as anything else in my life. If it wasn't for the fact that both beings said things that became true, I would have just written it off as hallucinations and nothing more. But the purple mother figure told me I would vomit specifically 3 times. There's no possibility of my subconscious just predicting that. And the energy father figure told me bad things would happen if I was there for too long. Like I said before, at the time and for a while after, I thought it was referring to the level of high I was and how it wasn't good for my health. But as time has gone on, I believe it was referring to the use of marijuana and drugs in general, and how there may be some aspect to it that blurs the line between realms. Perhaps also it meant that I was in a susceptible state where I could be easily influenced by forces beyond my understanding. The way in which his words became true are: never got that high again, but keep smoking anyway. For years pass by and it's now 2023. Weed intake increases until becoming a near-daily smoker the last 3 years. The relationship of 5+ years ended. Dropped out of college. I quit my job of 6 years because of crypto gains, stayed unemployed for 7 months, lost all my money, and found another job for 1.5 years, which I quit a month ago. Now in massive credit card debt and ruined my credit score, keeping the crypto dream alive of life support. Haven't paid taxes in 2 years. Physical health at its worst in my life. Mental health is so bad I've lived in a perpetual self-terminational state. No GF or any physical contact since getting dumped 3 years ago. 28 years old and had to move back in with my mom because of my financial collapse. Bad things did happen to me. The energy father was right, and I should have listened. I've lost my mind and will likely soon lose my life. I've watched all my relationships and accomplishments wither away as I did nothing to save them. I'll leave behind nothing but pain for the few people that still care. I've messed up beyond all measure and I see no path out of this web of failure I've created, and I have no one but myself to blame. I feel like I'm living in hell, but the truth is it could get so much worse. Self-termination seems like the only logical solution to end this perpetual state of pain, shame, and despair. Although I know logically it's the wrong choice, it's a thought that I cannot escape from. I should have listened to the white figure. Was it simply my subconscious? Was it a spiritual aid? Was it God? Sadly, I don't think I will ever know, and worse is that the answer wouldn't even help me at this point. I should have listened.
When I was 11 years old, the house burns down to a chimney fire. That same night, my mom was supremely drunk, randomly had a weird feeling and insisted on coming home. As I was browsing nude fakes of Miley Cyrus on my PSP, my mom drunkenly stumbled around the house trying to find the source of a weird smell in our house. She demands that we leave and stay the night at her fiancé's house. Next morning, my brother's friend reports our house is literal, the ruins in Pic related. Our entire small-town community bands together, gets us a new home and fills it with furniture. House is creepy. Me and siblings swap stories on how the basement is haunted. Things are normal for a few months, but the creepiness doesn't fade. One day randomly decide to read the Bible. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac begot Jacob. Suddenly, as clear as day, inches from my ear, I hear a whisper. Hey. Shocked, motionless for minutes. Respond. Hey. Nothing. A few weeks later, in the shower. Sitting on the floor of the shower, knees to my chest, head down. Get an overwhelming feeling that the shower is about to get really hot. Ghosts aren't real. Suddenly, out of nowhere, shower gets scorching hot. Scramble to get out. Never finish the shower and opt for baths occasionally.
Most unexplainable. I started seeing weird colors years ago. Most screens don't or can't display them, but I can only describe the colors as some kind of purple. The colors are most noticeable on the trees and on anything dark. When I'm in the dark, they're very prevalent. It has also become very easy to see in the dark while it's raining. Something about the water and the color makes it easy to see far in the dark. Also, I've noticed this weird banding above trees when I'm out and about. It's almost like looking through a very faint shadow that is somehow lingering in the air. This banding is almost imperceptible when standing still, but while moving, it becomes very apparent. I've also seen this banding above certain tall buildings. Kick-related is a sort of approximation of how I see things, though the colors are not quite right. Most paranormal. Me and my friend were riding around on some trails out in the woods a long time ago. He was on the four-wheeler and I was on the dirt bike. The trails went on for a good 15 miles or so. On the four-wheeler we had a little cooler that I crammed some tuna sandwiches in to have for lunch later that day. After riding and exploring a few hours, we stopped at our favorite spot on the trail. It was this area where the trail forked in two and immediately came back together, forming something of an island of trees between the two paths. In this island of trees was a big rock that we'd sit on. We opened up our lunch there and started clowning around as per normal when some movement just past the trail caught our eye. We sort of stopped and stared because we thought it was a bear. This giant black figure stood up from behind an old stump of a fallen tree and turned toward us, easily standing 9 feet tall. When I say black figure, I mean pitch black, Vanta black. The figure was man-shaped and had no discernible features aside from being so big. When it stood, we were basically already on our wheels. We left in a hurry.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
It seems that a writer has stumbled upon /x/.
Every year, an instant before the dawn of the summer solstice, the universe stops. Every single person in the world loses themselves except for one. This year, I was selected. I awoke knowing this. I know time will stand still, stars will hold their place, rivers will not run, galaxies will not spin, and the sun shall not rise on my town until I'm dead. Literally everyone else in the world is now unkillable and has a single overriding purpose: to kill me. Upon waking, I became aware of all the previous hunted ones. I know the name and face of each one as far back as people have had names, and the face of each who lived before that. I also know how they died. 2 years ago, it was a policeman in Brooklyn. His service pistol would not fire as a mob of random strangers overpowered him. 10 years ago, it was a fisherman in Hubei. He was strangled to death by his wife and her brother. I can cast my mind back to any previous era and see them all, know their lives, feel their terror as they learned their new fate. An old woman in Nice, a baseball player in Sendai, a homeless girl in Bengaluru, a businessman in Johannesburg. I could get lost in their stories. I can learn what they learned after being selected. Maybe I can use skills they acquired, if only to keep myself alive just a little longer. Last year, a 5-year-old girl in Peoria was the hunted one. She woke up and screamed aloud, overwhelmed by the flood of knowledge in her young mind. Her parents and brother were already on their way to her room. They raced in, tore her to pieces with their bare hands, and began devouring her corpse. Their neighbours came over, gnawed on her bones, and ate whatever they could grab of her hair and flesh. They ripped blood-soaked bits of her bedsheets and suckled them until they could drain no more, then simply ate them. Once she was fully consumed, everyone was sated. Around the world, the contentment was felt. And now, with time still at a halt, humanity has a new purpose. Every able body near enough to help came to their house. Without a single word among them, they tore down her wall decorations, carried her toys out to the trash, dismantled her bed, and removed every trace that she had existed. Once she was sufficiently erased from history, neighbours and strangers returned home and her family went to bed. Time itself resumed and the world turned again. The sun rose over Illinois. Her parents and their son woke up as they always had, mortal and sane once again, but with no memory of the girl. After that, my knowledge of their lives ends. So it is with them all. So I assume it will be with me. I know not what happens to records, be they paper or in computers. I assume a residual subconscious directive remains in the minds of any who had previously known us. Delete, destroy, ignore. Any who did not know of her might do the same, or they might find an anomaly somewhere during their job, a record of a girl who never existed, and consider it as a curiosity. But I can only guess. I know that eventually I will either be killed or end my own life. Once I am dead, everyone else in the world will do whatever they can to consume my corpse and erase my existence from history, just as they did to her and to hundreds of thousands before us. I live alone here. I ponder what I might accomplish in the time I have. Few people know where I live. I'm sure they are already on their way, but they must approach on foot. As ludicrous as it sounds, maybe they will ride bicycles. With time stopped, cars don't operate. Animals are frozen as well. This I know from the memories of the other hunted ones. I don't know how it is that guns, internal combustion engines, electric motors, and the metabolisms of all non-human creatures achieve stasis, while light still apparently emanates from lamps that were left on when everything stopped. Theoretically, I should be blind. These are things a precious few of the previous hunted ones wondered about. Most died before they were able to think, let alone do anything. My nearest neighbours are at least a mile away. They will be coming for me. However, relative to myself and my would-be murderers, I have time to plan. I don't know what I will do yet, but I start casting my mind backwards into the years, the centuries, the millennia. My mind is flooded with lifestyles, experiences, thoughts, fears, intuitions, creative ideas that I never would have dreamed of. A CEO with everything he ever wanted, reduced to tears when he was chosen. A slave who welcomed death as an escape from her personal hell. A Minecraft YouTuber whose foster children turned on him and rent his flesh from his bones as he fought for survival. A nun who dedicated her life to feeding the hungry, who prayed while the hungry fed on her. Thousands of years I plunge back, further and further. Ancient Greeks, Egyptians, Mesopotamians, tribal peoples from the beginnings of humanity, all murdering, eating, then erasing the hunted ones whenever the summer solstice landed on them. There seems to be no pattern, no reason, no consistency. I become numb to the thousands and thousands of faces that rush by. Their skins all become darker, their thoughts becoming baser, passing out of any knowledge of writing, then before spoken words, until I come to her. I am in the mind of the first hunted one. She knew what she was. She knew everything. Her ape-like face was barely human. She only knew her face, having seen it reflected in a pond. She had made the connection, realizing the face staring back at her from the water as her own. I had this memory now, and memories of a simple life, barely touched by abstracted thought, but touched all the same. As if turning around, I now gazed down the long line of hunted ones whose faces I passed on my way to her, stretching off into unimaginable distance. I see my own, and I see many that come after it. The knowledge is all there, and so are the memories. So many memories of things to come. I was once an optimist. Even after being made aware of my fate, I pondered the possibilities facing us as a species. Even knowing a band of my fellow humans would soon be coming to rip me to pieces and feast on my flesh, I assumed it was part of some primal order to the universe, some balance to keep things running, some inscrutable system. I know that when tomorrow comes again, everyone will wake up with no memory of this or me, just as they have for hundreds of millennia. They aren't guilty. They know not what they do, as someone once said. She saw everything in the moment of her awakening. It was not just all the future hunted ones, but their lives and times. Through her memories, I see it all too. The future of humanity, the world and the universe is before us. I see what's coming. I used to lament having no children. Now I am relieved. After typing these last few words on my old typewriter, I will let them in. I begin to hear the footsteps outside my door. I now go to them willingly. It is a mercy.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.